Well, welcome to another Larry Nemecek Curtis Webster vid blog. Our guest today, once again, is Roger Nygard, who is the director of Trekkies and Trekkies 2. And Roger was with us back in February. We screened portions of those two films and had a great discussion. And Roger's coming back in May to talk about his brand new film, The Nature of Existence. Roger?
Good to be here.
Well, it's good to have you here once again. Always good to have you here. Of course, I guess I'm in your house,
right,
so anyway. Nature of Existence. Now, this is not a Star Trek film, but we think it's going to be very interesting to the Star Trek community. Tell me about this film.
Well, I traveled all around the world and asked people the big question, why do we exist? I talked to 150 people and collected all their answers. And usually it starts out with, why do we exist? But then that becomes, that leads to the next question, which is, what is our purpose? Which leads to another question, like, well, if I have a purpose, what happens after my time here? So is there an afterlife? Where does it exist? Etc. And so I asked people these questions of all the major religions and belief systems, as well as my neighbor's daughter, pizza chefs, wrestlers, collected all their answers into one movie and present it for you to sort of assimilate all of these, like the world's opinions on why do we exist.
What is the narrative thread in Nature of Existence?
It's my journey. I go on the road, and it starts with me asking these questions. And these questions sort of surfaced for me throughout my life when I was faced with mortality. Whether it was when I first realized someday I was going to die at around the age of 7, and then when my father died when I was 13, it brought that question to the forefront again. What happens when you die? Where do you go? It's like, what version of you goes on? Because for my dad, who died from multiple sclerosis, he wasted away over several years, and when he did pass away, it was a much less vibrant version of himself. He was down to like 85 pounds. Like a 6-foot guy who weighed 170 pounds had lost half of himself. So what happens? Is he regenerated into an earlier version of himself, or what? And nobody really had any good answers. It was basically you just have to have faith, and you have to we can't understand everything. But once you open up the door to asking questions, more questions come, and so I thought, what happens when a baby dies? Is it a baby for eternity, or is it given a full knowledge, or college education? But who gets to choose the baby's major? And something has to happen, right? And so we don't know, because nobody's gone there and come back aside from Jesus, and maybe Lazarus, and a handful of people in the stories in the Bible or whichever holy book that people subscribe to. There are stories, but we don't have any people of modern day who can come back with videotape and explain what happened. So who knows? I wanted to know. I started asking questions, and that's what led to making a movie about it.
Interesting. I just note that in the New Testament, a lot of Paul's letters deal with that very question of there's a bodily resurrection, but what does that mean? At what stage do you come back? If your body's been in the grave for quite a while, there's not much of it left, so if we resurrect what's there, that's not going to do you a lot of good. So you're asking some really fundamental questions here.
I started with a list of scientists, I think was one of the lists I drew upon. So I talked to a lot of famous scientists like Leonard Susskind, who was one of the fathers of string theory. I spoke to the Pope of Atheists, Richard Dawkins, who was very strident in his belief system. I spoke with science fiction authors like Larry Niven, who wrote Ringworld and Lucifer's Hammer, among other things, and Orson Scott Card, who
great writer,
love Ender's Game. He was maybe the most famous Mormon. So he approaches his answers both from a Mormon perspective and as well as a writer, a sci-fi writer's perspective. So this is the poster for the film.
There's our logo.
One for you.
Here's one for me too.
And you can see at the bottom of the poster several other people that I've interviewed. I interviewed like Ann Druyan, who wrote the movie, co-wrote the movie with her husband, late husband Carl Sagan, Contact.
Mm-hmm.
And she's wonderful in the movie. Irvin Kershner, who directed Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, who's arguably the best Star Wars movie. At least I'll argue it.
Right.
He was really a fascinating interview, and I don't think anyone had really interviewed him about the big questions of life before. People have interviewed him about Star Wars, ad infinitum. But he had a really interesting perspective on life, and also one of my favorite quotes from him, which we put in our trailer, was I asked him about happiness. How do you find happiness? And Irvin Kershner said that you can't really find happiness. You have moments of happiness in life, because life is filled with difficulties and pain and suffering and illness and death. So you find moments of happiness. Anybody who wants to be happy all the time, you'd have to be a complete idiot.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
That's the formula.
Too much of anything, Lieutenant. Even love isn't a good thing. Yeah.
Exactly. All emphasis is no emphasis.
Part of what I think we really enjoyed about your two Trekkies films is that you never lost your sense of humor, even when dealing with some heavy stuff. And the same thing applies in Nature of Existence. And I get the sense that a lot of times you're laughing with us and not at us.
You have to laugh or you go insane.
Exactly.
Because life is absurd and it's full of pain and suffering, and that's how we deal with it. If you don't have a mechanism of dealing with the suffering, you will go crazy. So you have to take a step back and not take yourself too seriously in this life. I think that's part of mental health. A good mental health is a good sense of humor. And it's the same with asking the big questions. People trying to answer the unanswerable is funny sometimes. Sometimes it's poignant. Sometimes they make a great point. The whole spectrum is covered in this film. I mean, there are laugh out loud moments, and there are moments that make you really, kind of freak you out.
Yeah.
Because they're like big concepts, and so I should warn you, you probably shouldn't see this film because it will mess with your mind.
It will mess with you. It'll mess with your karma. Mess with whatever else. Now we're gonna do this on May 23rd at First Press Encino, 4963 Balboa Boulevard, 7 o'clock as always. And this isn't just a screening. When does the film premiere? In its commercial release?
In New York City, June 18th, and July 2nd in Los Angeles.
Here in Los Angeles, and we're looking for distribution elsewhere.
And then many other cities to follow after that.
So this is a really special moment. This is a chance to see this film before its commercial release. Roger will be there. We're going to have a discussion about it afterwards. You'll have a chance to react to it. You'll have a chance to argue with it. You'll have a chance to praise it, whatever you want to do. And I've seen the film myself, and I'll say this, no matter where you are on the spectrum, theologically, ideologically, philosophically, you will find something in this film to delight you, and you will find something in this film to, as Roger said, mess with your mind. It's an amazing survey course, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. We see that in this film with all the great belief systems of the world, some of the minor belief systems of the world. But again, he's pulled out, I think, the universals. It's told with humor. It's also told with great seriousness. I think it's a very profound film, and it's a film that if you think at all about these questions, you really ought to do yourself a favor and go see it. Anyway, Roger, thank you.
Thank you.
See you on the 23rd.
If you want to see the trailer to get a sense of the movie, you can see it on our website, which is just the name of the film.com. It's thenatureofexistence.com.
Check that out, and hope to see you on the 23rd.
Okay, guys, we'll see you.